Introduction. Have you always wanted to travel to Europe because you are fascinated about seeing the sights, exploring new places, meeting different people, tasting national cuisines, and experiencing other cultures? Do your limited finances hold you back? Don't give up hope. There are many ways to economize, yet get the most out of your travels. In the 1960s, authors wrote books on how to travel Europe for $10 per day. The United States dollar was worth considerably more than European currencies. Nowadays, authors write books on how to travel Europe for $50 or even $100 a day. Some European currencies have become strong as the American dollar. For example, in 2001, a person could exchange 80 cents for €1, but 10 years later, the same consumer needed to pay $1.30 for the same currency. Further statistics from a recent 12-month comparison show the U.S. dollar down 1.5% against the British pound, 15.3% against the euro, 17.2% against the Swiss franc, 18.2% against Norway's kroner, and an amazing 27.5% against the Polish zloty. Nevertheless, it is still possible for people who are willing to be flexible and adventurous to travel off the beaten track in European countries for as little as $10 a day, excluding the airfare to get there and back. This does not mean you'll be roughing it. You can have an enjoyable time and experience a more authentic Europe connected to everyday life than you would in organized tours or succumbing to expensive tourist attractions. However, you will have to slash away at the prices, do without some comforts of life, refrain from buying impulses, travel extremely light, depend on others, and be prepared to share with people you meet. You can have wonderfully exciting experiences that will help you learn about the cultures you encounter. Traveling on a low budget takes courage, stamina, and independence, so you should go while you still have the health, resources, and opportunity. Don't put it off. The trip will be an adventure that most likely will change your life as you become more insightful about the world and humanity. This book presents the basics, but you can add your individual specifics. Let's explore the possibilities together. One's destination is never a place, but a new way of seeing things. Henry Miller. Let's look at the basics of a frugal but enjoyable trip. These essential steps will help you make the most of your money and your time. Chapter 1. Plan your trip. Survey your status of finances and interests. Travel in an off-season time of year, off the beaten path. Check on budget bargain countries and regions. Evaluate alternatives to taking a vacation. Inform your contacts who can provide assistance. Lay out the ground rules. The first step is to examine your budget limitations. Assess your personal lifestyle, preferences, and abilities, and look at your expenses. Budget limitations. Assess how much money you have to spend on a trip to Europe. What amount can you take out of savings? Can you put aside some of your earnings between now and the time you leave on the trip? Can you supplement the cash available in any way? Will you be working on a special project that may be worthy of sponsorship? Who might be interested in financing your project? Even if you have more than enough savings to pay for a trip, you may not want to deplete them. After all, the less you spend, the more you have in the end. Personal preferences, abilities. Are you a person who can rough it, or are you firmly convinced you do not want to forego the comfort of a hotel? You need to know just how much you are willing to sacrifice in order to save money, and yet have a wonderful, fulfilling time. Take stock of your personality to decide what kind of a vacation you want to have. Are you tired out from too many pressures and looking forward simply to relaxing on a sunny beach or cruising in a houseboat along inland waterways? Perhaps you are striving for physical activity, like taking walking tours in cities, biking from one destination to another, hiking, skiing in the mountains, playing golf on famous courses, swimming in waters you come across, going horseback riding over hill and dale, or sailing along the rugged coast. Many people are interested in absorbing the arts, such as music, painting, architecture, and drama in museums, cathedrals, symphony halls, opera houses, and theaters. Some like to meet other people and learn about their culture. Another possibility is exploring historical and/or spiritual religious influences on humanity, for which you can explore pilgrim routes, ancient mystery centers, legendary castles, and remains of ancient civilizations. It is possible you have a combination of these things in mind. However, don't make your goals too broad. Visiting major cities in many countries is tempting. Some people think that is the way to judge where they will want to return in the future. However, a major city hardly reflects the life in the whole nation. You will miss so much that each country has to offer if you hurry through. Make do with what you have. Can you put off making a big purchase or save money by buying second-hand? Unless necessary, don't buy new gear. Do with what you have. Rather than give in to the temptation to purchase a new car, house, furniture, or other possessions, allocate some of the money to your trip. Check on the purpose of your trip. Will you be working, studying, or doing something else that perhaps gives you a base of operations in one location from which you make day or weekend tours? Alternatively, will you be moving around to see the sights? The answer to this question will help you plan your itinerary. Base of operations. One approach would be to study the language in a school abroad. After all, complete immersion is the best method for learning a new language. For example, Eurocenter's language schools are particularly budget-worthy. You can learn French in the quiet town of Amboise or La Rochelle, close to the sea. Italian is offered in Florence in the historic quarter near Ponte Vecchio. German is taught in Berlin on Potsdamer Platz. You can become fluent in Spanish in Barcelona, in the heart of the city, Marbella near the Old City and Beach, and Valencia in the University District. On the move. If you love organ music, you may want to take a tour of the most famous pipe organs in France, to hear and play on instruments made by Cavelier-Coll, Clicquot, Jean de Joyeuse, Merklin, and Silbermann. Your travels may take you to Alzette, Bordeaux, Languedoc, and Paris. Such a trip could be combined with the Organ Festival, Toulouse-le-Haut, held in October. In advance, you might want to write letters or emails to the church organists announcing your particular interest in organ music, intent to visit their churches, and desire to arrange a time to meet them when you visit. Pick an off-season time of year. Summer is a peak for European vacations. It is the most expensive time of year to travel. Countries are crowded with tourists. Alternatively, the whole country may be on vacation, with the result that many establishments will be closed. It is a well-known fact that August is the month when French people typically go on holidays. If you want to meet French people, that's precisely the time to avoid traveling in France. Spring and autumn are less expensive and offer the pleasures of delicate flowers early in the year and colorful leaves later. The weather can be cold and rainy. Winter, except for the Christmas season, may be the least expensive, but this time of year can present cold, rainy, snowy conditions and the days are dark. You may enjoy winter best if you are a hardy person when the fewest tourists are in your way. Of course, that is also the best time of year to participate in skiing sports. Skiing at resorts is expensive, and you may have to be creative about finding an alternative approach. Perhaps cross-country skiing or snowshoeing will appeal to you. Don't forget that one of the principal drawbacks of being in Europe in winter is that many venues are closed from late September or October until the tourist season begins again in the spring. You will get lower airfares and accommodations when you travel in the off-season time of year. You will spend less time in lines, and you will meet more local European people. Decide where you want to go. Greater Europe is 10.18 million square kilometers and comparable to the United States with 9.83 square kilometers in size. Europe has distinct geographic barriers of the Arctic Ocean to the north, Mediterranean Ocean to the south, Atlantic Ocean to the west, and divided from Asia to the east by the watershed divides of the Ural and Caucasus Mountains, as well as the waterways connecting the Black and Aegean Seas. Narrow your focus. Europe offers a myriad of exciting destinations, and it is necessary for you to narrow the scope of where you want to go. Confining your choices will reduce travel costs between non-contiguous regions, and you will have more time for sightseeing. Arm yourself with information, and do not let foreign languages be an obstacle. Arm yourself with information. Get information about the most important places you want to travel. Many sources of information include multiple and individual country guides, hotel and restaurant guides, language phrase books, travel books, hostel information, videos, maps, and the Internet. Friends and acquaintances can provide you with additional information. This advice is valuable because it incorporates their personal observations and experiences. Start a notebook and jot down reminders of what you find particularly enticing and details including dates, timetables, names, addresses, telephone numbers, email addresses that may be helpful. Keep track of price comparisons that you discover when shopping so that you know your budgetary options. Carry these notes around with you on your trip because some of these ideas you can implement your plans if these change suddenly. Notes help when plans change. I spent time during one year when I was preparing for a trip to Germany and Austria with my late husband, reading guidebooks and researching possible destinations. One area that especially caught my interest was the National Park Jesusa in the northern part of Steiermark, Austria. I discussed the idea with my husband, the possibility of traveling there, but he summarily rejected the idea because he preferred to visit museums and architectural attractions in large cities rather than natural wildlife areas. We followed the itinerary he planned for us in Austria, where we spent a few days in Salzburg, visiting Mozart exhibits and enjoying musical performances. We then drove east along the Danube River, where we stopped at some of the imposing abbeys along the way. Finally, we stayed a while in Vienna, admiring various styles of architecture, and we visited the Gustav Klimt Museum to watch the world-famous dressage-trained Lipizzaner horses at the Spanish riding school. We listened to an opera at the Wiener Staatsoper. We enjoyed good food on our trip when we drank the year's Hoedoge wine and ate saturated chocolate Sachertorte, cake topped with a whopping dollop of whipping cream, Schlagschaum, at the famous Sacher Hotel. The Australian sky then was covered with dark, gloomy clouds, and the weather was rainy. We were faced with more cloud cover to the west as we were heading back across Austria. My husband was depressed to think we could not avoid more soggy conditions, and he stopped the car, surveyed the weather patterns in the sky. There was a ray of sunshine peeping through the clouds to the south. My heart skipped a beat as he turned the car in that direction. Just over the horizon was the Jezusa. I got my way after all. We agreed to make the national park our new destination and drove under gradually clearing skies for miles along the Enns River Gorge that cuts deeply through a natural landscape flanked by sheer, rugged, majestic Australian Alps and dominated by wild white waters, craggy rocks, unspoiled alpine pastures, and thickly growing forests. We stopped at a restaurant in the evening for dinner. A local band gathered to perform folk songs, complete with spectacular yodeling. Later, we found a room in an inn with unforgettably cozy accommodations. The next day, we had brilliant sunny skies for the first time in weeks. The ride was picturesque, and my husband was in such a good mood that when we drove back to the highway leading to Salzburg, he stopped the car at the entrance to Jezusa. "That was such a fantastic ride," he exclaimed, and to my great surprise added, "Let's do it again." Thus I got my wish 2 times instead of not at all, because I had made a note of what I wanted to see. One of my most passionate travel theories is, always set a goal for where you want to go and what you want to see. However, take the attitude that it doesn't matter if you actually reach your goal or not. The adventure on the way matters most. If you don't have a goal, you might still be sitting at home while the world passes by you. English as a foreign language. Consider whether it is important for you to converse only in English, or whether you are adventurous enough to use a language phrasebook and sign language when necessary. If you want to confine yourself to English communication, you might think you could focus on a trip through the British Isles. Be advised that even in London you may not be able to understand the people because they often use different terms, unfamiliar pronunciation, or a dialect. People who speak a Cockney dialect, for example, are especially difficult for outsiders to understand. In Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, the same problems arise. Irish Gaelic, a Goidelic language, Celtic, of the Indo-European language family, which originated in Ireland and is the official language of the country, is spoken as a first language by a small minority of the people, and also as a second language for a large part of the population. The form of English spoken in Ireland is Hiberno-English, which has a certain sing-song quality. Different regions in Scotland have distinct dialects and indigenous words. The poetry of Robert Burns and others is largely responsible for the survival of older words. Using a dictionary of Scottish words is helpful here. Welsh English consists of the dialects spoken in Wales. These dialects are highly influenced by Welsh grammar and often contain unfamiliar words. There are also heavy accents that are especially noticeable in Cardiff, the South Wales Valleys, and West Wales. Therefore, it doesn't matter where you travel in Europe because you will run across communication problems everywhere. Arm yourself with dictionaries and phrase books, or buy them in the countries you visit. Thankfully, Europeans are making much more effort than we Americans to learn English. You will find many younger people so eager to practice their English that you won't be able to learn their language from them. Difficulty with the English language. One of my experiences with a foreign dialect of English was the time I relocated to Edinburgh, Scotland, when my job as the editor-in-chief for the National Word Processing and Information Systems magazine folded in 1984. I thought that I would have no trouble understanding the local people because, of course, they speak English. I was shocked to find the language was completely incomprehensible at first. I had to keep asking people to repeat or define their words until their sentences became intelligible to me. When I thought I could understand the language well, I bought tickets for a Bobby Burns play to learn more about the Scottish culture. When the play began, I could not understand anything the actors said. I leaned forward in my seat, strained my ears, and I concentrated on catching individual words. It was such a useless exercise that I had to excuse myself from the theater during the first intermission. I concentrated on local dialogue and never attended a play in Scotland again. English is less widespread in Eastern Europe. People have not had the opportunity to learn a foreign language, or they had to study one other than English. For example, while the eastern part of Germany was under communist control, it was mandatory that students learn Russian. The same is true for many people in the former Russian bloc countries. However, this situation is changing gradually. Eastern European countries are striving to become competitive on the world market and realize the benefits of their citizens speaking English. Now English is being taught in many of their schools and infrastructure development programs. Therefore, you will meet a growing number of people who speak various levels of English. Whether they speak it well enough for you to understand is another matter. Check on budget bargain countries and regions. Get off the beaten track. Avoid the places where most tourists go. Select largely ignored remote vacation spots that are less expensive, have their own charm, and offer interesting attractions. You will find both bargain countries and economical regions. Here are just a few examples of the many enticing places. Bargain countries. At the time of writing this book, budget bargain countries include the Balkan states in southeastern Europe, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Greece, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and European Turkey. Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. These countries have rich heritage worth exploring. Here are some examples. Bulgaria. The continent's oldest state, Bulgaria's history goes back to a sophisticated ancient society that produced some of antiquity's finest gold artifacts and the gladiator Spartacus. Its topography ranges from white, sandy beaches to snow-capped mountains. Its colorful culture blends the ancient with the modern. The food can be described as a blend of Greek and Middle Eastern. Greece. The Greek government, for its 2011 budget, made deep spending cuts. However, because tourism is such important business in Greece, the government reduced its value-added tax on the tourism industry from 11 to 6.5%. The country's recent financial crisis also means savings for visitors. Therefore, this is a particularly good time to visit Greece. Malta. In the heart of the Mediterranean, you are able to find consistently pleasant weather on the island of Malta. Increasingly, it is popular as a low-cost destination in Europe. Malta offers friendly people and an active nightlife, as well as opportunities for sightseeing and scuba diving. Austria, Germany, Italy, Switzerland. Alps. Vacations in the Alps represent one of Europe's greatest values. You may bring along your own boots for hiking, rent skis and gear for the slopes, or borrow snowshoes for cross-country treks on well-marked trails. Mountain huts offer cheap beds and reasonable, tasty menus. The scenery is also spectacular. Croatia, Plitvice Lakes. If you love nature, you will not want to miss the Plitvice National Park, one of the most beautiful natural sites in Europe. The park, containing a system of 16 interlinked lakes and a large forest, was named to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1979. The lakes, which run in a north-south direction, are separated into upper and lower clusters. rainwater runoff from the mountains descends about 70 feet from lake to lake over a distance of some 8 kilometers. The lakes are constantly changing in colors due to the quantity of minerals or organisms in the water and the angle of the sun. Czech Republic, Moravia. This area is located to the south of Bohemia, is a perfect place to take a wine tour, go biking, or drive between old-age villages flanked with vineyards and sample the spirits and sights along the way. Prized are the area's white and ice wines. Moravia is not as expensive as traditional wine regions like Provence in France or Tuscany in Italy. France, Loire Valley. This valley straddles the namesake river and contains some of the most beautiful Renaissance castles and chateaux that France has to offer. Biking through the Loire is one of the more popular activities, and long paths follow the river and climb into the neighboring hills. The cities, which have fascinating backgrounds, offer many historical buildings, intricately designed churches, and museums. Orleans is proud of its Joan of Arc history. Germany, Berlin. In a way, Berlin is an anomaly because it is a sprawling capital city and flooded with tourists. Nevertheless, it is known to be much cheaper than any other major Western European city. The city offers hundreds of museums and galleries, as well as thousands of restaurants, shops, and nightclubs. There is no shortage of things to do and see. Going to nightclubs is a Berliner's way of life. It is a terrific way to hear the city's latest music and see fashion on display. The city's Berlin Welcome Card, good for 48 or 72 hours, offers free public transportation and half-price admission to more than 130 attractions. Greece, Greek islands. Famed picturesque whitewashed houses, blue domed churches, cocky windmills, and romantic sandy beaches surrounded by sparkling sapphire seas is the drawing card for the Greek islands. Choose the small ones and avoid or just pass by those that are famous like Mykonos and Santorini, where the cost of living is higher. One recommendation is Tinos in the Cyclades. It offers a beautiful, relaxed atmosphere, and most tourists are Greek. On Crete, you save money in the south as opposed to the north. You might want to rent a Vespa scooter for a day so that you can get to some remote places not visited by tourists. Italy, Cinque Terre. One of the best-kept travel secrets is northern Italy's coastal region of Liguria, where 5 tiny seaside villages compose the Cinque Terre region. Corniglia, Manarola, Monterosso, Rio Maggiore, and Vernazza are proud villages perched above the sea that are surrounded by vineyards. Life is laid back, and pastimes are simple when you can walk from one village to the next along trails that reveal spectacular vistas, or you can swim in the Mediterranean, bask in the sun, or indulge in delicious local food and wine. Romania, Transylvania. This Eastern European country is famous for producing one of the world's most frightening characters, Count Dracula. Author Bram Stoker based the fictional count on the real Dracula, Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, 1431 through 1476, who was noted for his cruelty to the Turks and to his own people. Guides who escort Dracula fans around the area are full of eerie myths and stories that mimic the sometimes wild scenery and old-world culture. The landscape contains jagged mountains covered with forest, farmland, medieval villages, and castles. Sweden, Baltic Sea cruises. Cruises are available dirt cheap from Stockholm, the main port in Sweden, to Helsinki, Åland, and Turku in Finland, Tallinn in Estonia, and Riga in Latvia. Tax-free alcohol shopping is one of the main attractions. Some of the newer ships are quite pretty, and it is a budget-friendly way to see more of Scandinavia or experience the Baltic states. For the cheapest tickets, go on a weekday in low season, share a 4-bed cabin with friends, and keep looking for last-minute offers. Switzerland, Lauterbrunnen. This area comprises the villages of Gimmelwald, Isenflö, Lauterbrunnen, Meeren, Stechelberg, and Wengen. The area is named after the many springs or fountains in the region. Numerous waterfalls in the summer cascade down canyon walls into the valley below. Skiing in the mountains is popular in winter. Paragliding is also popular in the warmer months. Turkey. Turquoise coast. Vacations on the Italian Riviera and the Greek islands are pricey, and costs for holidays along Croatia's Dalmatian coast are rising rapidly. However, you can still find bargains along Turkey's turquoise coast. This spectacular 1,000-mile shoreline offers azure blue waters, ancient ruins, great food, culture, and music. The most interesting part of the coast lies between the cities of Antalya and Dalaman, which in summer are connected with Istanbul by regular air and bus service. United Kingdom. The Cotswolds. The Cotswolds is an ideal location to use as a home base for touring the sites in Bath, Bristol, London, and Stratford-upon-Avon. This area has its share of European castles, cathedrals, museums, manors, gardens, and more. Think about going alone or with others. There are advantages and disadvantages to traveling alone or with others. Here are some things to ponder. Travel alone. Traveling alone in Europe provides you the most freedom. You can make unhampered decisions and do exactly what you want. You can meet people more easily because you come face to face with the locals. However, you may experience periods of loneliness. If you travel alone, you must be socially outgoing, as well as flexible and adventurous. This definitely is not the mode of travel for people who are afraid of the unknown. Go with companions. Traveling with 1 or 2 friends can be a delightful shared existence. That is, if you can all agree on where to go and what to do, and keep to a strict time schedule. If you travel with friends, you should set some simple parameters, like how early to have breakfast, what action to take if you are separated, and what time you will start looking for lodging for the night, and what is the latest hour that you should take dinner. It is also important to take into account the dietary requirements of each person and ensure everyone will obtain what she needs. For example, if you prefer to skip lunches, be sure you make anyway, because most people become uncomfortable if they don't get 3 regular meals a day. If you are the group leader, be flexible enough to give in to other people's wishes. Designated leader. Traveling with more than one companion requires give and take to keep each person satisfied. Nevertheless, traveling with an extended entourage heaps on additional problems because each person has an idea of how the trip should proceed. Smoothing out the differences can lead to arguments that have to be solved, thus delaying time schedules. Make sure there is a designated trip leader who the others recognize as the authority. The trip leader should make the final decision, and everybody should abide by it. Take a group tour. The third possibility is to book a group tour. The advantages are that everything is pre-planned for you. You may pay a lump sum, usually at a lower price than if you had to arrange everything for yourself, because there are discounts for a group rate, and with the exception of optional side trips or benefits for which you have to pay extra. You also receive transportation, lodging, a certain number of meals, entrance to tourist sites, and informative lectures included. The tour agent informs you of all necessary travel documents and arranges airline tickets, transfers, and hotel reservations. The disadvantages are that you may not like the meals or your travel companions, don't have a chance to mix with local people, and cannot visit some sites you would prefer. There are companies that offer travel packages at rock-bottom prices. For under $1,000, plus airfare, you could spend 7 to 13 days abroad enjoying a fully escorted tour. However, you should read the fine print carefully to find out what is not included. You may have to pay an added fee if you cannot bring along a second person to stay in your room or are not willing to share an accommodation with one of the other travelers. There may be extra charge optional tours that take place during free time interludes. Lunch and/or dinner may not be included every day. You will then be on your own for those meals, which is an added expense. I once booked a 16-day group tour by bus from Frankfurt, Germany, through the Loire Valley in France, to cultural sites in Spain and Portugal. The group was composed primarily of Germans. The tour agent, to my dismay, had ordered typical German meals of pork roast, sauerkraut, and dumplings at every restaurant we ate. Obviously, German patrons to whom the bus company catered were not adventuresome in trying new cuisines. I had to abandon the group, waive the meal provided and already paid for, and seek out a nearby restaurant where I could experience local Spanish cooking. On a tour bus, if you have enough people on your side, you might be able to lobby the driver to make a change in the itinerary. Asserting authority. I traveled once with a group of German passengers in a bus touring Sicily, and our driver dutifully guided us to the predestined sites listed on our itinerary. At one sightseeing stop, it became evident that some of the Germans were well versed in guidebook information and had distinct ideas of attractions they wanted to visit. Word was passed around that they were going to miss seeing a charming church nearby. The Germans ganged up on the driver to allow them a second drop-off point so they could include this place on the afternoon's agenda. No matter how inviting a group tour sounds, you have to pay for it. You have to spend more money for any deviations you make. Therefore, you should assess whether the package tour really fits into your particular interests and budget or not. Evaluate alternatives to vacation. It is now possible to work, study, or volunteer your services abroad. Legal work will require a residence permit in the country in question. Study generally requires you pay for the course. Volunteering usually provides you with lodging and food. However, if you play these alternatives to your advantage, you may even be paid off the books for time spent vacationing in a European country. Work abroad. Working in Europe is an ideal opportunity to absorb the local culture, become fluent in a language, and be paid for your adventure. However, getting employment is largely a matter of contacts and luck. First, you need to have a work permit. Countries, because of high unemployment rates, do not grant work permits to a person who will take a job away from one of its citizens. A company wanting to hire you must declare you have the particular profession or skills for the job and no one else in the European homeland is suitable. Only then it is possible to obtain the necessary papers. Some forms of work include teaching English as a foreign language, au pair services for taking care of children and managing a household, serving as a guide for a travel company when you have sufficient travel experience and perhaps a second language, or working for a multinational company with marketing offices abroad. Au pair arrangements often include living in the house where you are working, some minimum compensation, and enrollment in a language school whereby the host family pays part of the expenses. Another alternative is to find a job at a festival. This could be one focusing, for instance, on music, film, food, or beverages. You could be wearing one of many different hats, from working behind the scenes in the press office to handing out programs and guiding the visitors. Stewards, security officers, janitors, and waiters are also needed. Different arrangements for paid or non-paying positions can be made. Your services could be required for 1 to 3 months surrounding the actual event. If you want to participate in a festival, plan early, because the jobs are competitive. Send an email to inquire about work possibilities, or simply go to a festival and ask volunteers how they got their jobs. Living and earning abroad. My partner and I, when we lived in Edinburgh, Scotland, found an apartment situated adjacent to one of the city's numerous golf courses. Fortunately, I had some money saved, and my partner was able to dabble in off-the-record buying and selling of cars in order to have enough money to travel and gain some valuable insights. Together, we visited restaurants and pubs open into the wee hours of the morning in order to write and self-publish a guide to Edinburgh after midnight, for which we often received free meals and drinks in return for the publicity we were providing. In spring, we admired the exuberant display of rapidly changing flowers, first generous fields of daffodils stretching as far as the eye could see. Then tulips filled the landscape in their stead, followed by azaleas and rhododendrons everywhere. In summer, we were amazed by the rapid development of plants, striving to keep up with and maybe even outrun the short growing season. Even though people warned us not to travel to the Highlands in November when the weather would be bleak and dreary, we went anyway, in a used Volkswagen camping bus, because it seemed a shame not to utilize the time exploring the country. Underway, we admired land formations perfectly mirrored in still waters of the lochs we passed. Colors in the landscape were overwhelmingly subtle and beautiful. Working in Germany. Following a 1-year stay in Scotland, I obtained a job as editor for a magazine called Made in Germany, which was produced and published near Frankfurt am Main, Germany. 6 times a year the magazine reported in English about high-tech products, technology, and services offered by German manufacturers on the world market. The company for which I worked was able to certify that my editorial background, dual language skills, and writing ability could not be matched by any other German citizen. Therefore, I was able to apply and receive my residence and work permits. I remember getting up before dawn in the mornings in order to be first in line at the work and residence permit offices. After a long wait before the doors were finally opened, we were admitted into a room where we had to take a number and wait our turn with many other foreigners. Inasmuch as each person's case took up to 20 minutes to settle before the next person was served, there was a long wait for people who arrived later. Once receiving the work permit, I didn't have to renew it again. However, each year for 5 years, I had to renew the residence permit before receiving a permanent one. It was a grueling process each time. That stay in Germany lasted 25 years, during which time I made it a point to become integrated into the local society. In Germany, I cemented many rock-solid friendships with people I can always visit in the future. It was possible for me to travel by bus, train, car, RV vehicle, boat, and plane to destinations throughout the country as well as other European lands. Study abroad. Many foreign schools and universities offer extensive programs of learning at affiliated institutions. If you plan to study at one of these, it might be necessary for you to be fluent in the corresponding language. It would be wise to inform yourself about the requirements. Just be aware that study programs require registration fees as well as living and food expenses. Therefore, this may not fit into your budget. Other schools concentrate on teaching you the language. Most often they are geared to not only having you pay for the course, but also your own lodging and food. Therefore, they can be quite expensive propositions. An interesting work-study program is offered by Workaway, workaway.info, which facilitates contact between possible host families and students. The company believes its workawayers learn more language staying and working with a host family than they do in a 4-week course at a school. They are not put into a class of students with the same mother tongue, and they have the opportunity to mix directly with native speakers of the country of their choice. They have a reason to communicate. Working with somebody is often the best way to start conversations and help expand your vocabulary. Furthermore, there are no agents or host families to pay and no school fees. Participants find host families in a list and contact the ones that are most interesting to them. Learning the language. On my first long-term visit to Germany for 2.5 years, I was determined to improve my knowledge of the language that I had studied in high school. I first enrolled in a 6-week Goethe Institute course and then engaged in further training. In order to experience a more complete immersion, I followed several steps. I became friends with a German man living in the village where I was stationed. Inasmuch as he didn't speak any English, I was forced to communicate with him in his language. We spent many evenings in a local pub sitting at the Stammtisch, main table reserved for regular patrons. Watching the people play cards and dice and conversing with them, I had an opportunity to improve my vocabulary and learn the local Bavarian dialect as well. When my friend and I took hiking trips in the Alpine foothills, we listened to the radio as we drove to our destination. At home, we entertained guests and watched television. I made it a point to read magazines and books covering different topics in which I was interested. As soon as my language skills were good enough, I obtained residency and work permits in order to work as a translator of technical information from German to English. Participate in an exchange program. Creative people arrange to exchange houses with like-minded persons so that each can obtain exciting new views about a foreign country. Student exchange programs have been popular for several decades, whereby young people and participating host families mingle to appreciate what the others offer in the form of culture and language. Escape into a retreat. All over Europe there are retreat facilities for many purposes: religious, yoga, detoxification, spa treatments, medical, and meditation. It requires a lot of research to find the inexpensive or even free ones. For example, free lodging opportunities are available for creative people. La Muse Inn in Languedoc, France, is a place where writers and artists can exchange their skills for several days' work a week in the off-season. Creators Inn in Gothenburg and Stockholm, Sweden, asks only that you apply with a convincing case. Religious retreats include convents, which charge a modest fee that includes at least 2 meals, and monasteries, some of which take in travelers free of charge. This is because the order's hospitality rules preclude turning destitute people away. Monasteries usually are found in the countryside, where there is a strong religious connection, such as around Assisi or Rome in Italy. Volunteer your services. Several international organizations offer opportunities for volunteering your services. You may serve as an agricultural, medical, legal, educational, environmental, scientific, or business consultant to help people. Some pay a low compensation for your services, which is an ideal way to earn money that covers your expenses while you are absorbing the culture abroad. Avoid programs that require you to pay high fees, room and board. Retire to Europe. Retiring to Europe is tempting. You need to have savings enough to cover your stay, and you need to get a residence permit or a visa. You can obtain an application from the consulate of your intended country. Application for a residence permit includes a criminal check, health exam, proof of financial stability, and health insurance. Check the particular requirements of your intended country. When you are having ID photos made, order a few extra. You will be able to use them for immigration forms and registering your address with the police.